Years ago, I got a letter from my dad in response to my decision to study theology. He wrote, "I was impressed with your application, son. However, remember that idealists are often rewarded with frustration when it comes to translating this into satisfaction to oneself or positive contributions to society. So remember, keep in mind that you have to have a practical application which is realistically doable." And then he added, "Good luck." Well, it sounded a little bit like something off of Mission Impossible to me back then. But here, 30 years later, I have an answer to my late father in what I call inspirational core values, which are indeed relevant to the practical aspects of life and have the added feature of bringing inspiration or motivation to those tasks. My father was a tremendous influence in my life. I am very much my father's son. Many years ago, I thought that I was going to follow my father's footsteps, to be a lawyer, to be a corporate executive, and I decided to go off on a different path. But on this path, as I have counseled people over the years about what's most important in life and given messages to inspire and motivate people, what I found is that these core values which I learned from my father and which indeed I saw in his professional life as well as his private life, these core values are actually also found in the faith that I have been living and counseling people within. The book Milepost, the story of the world's longest petroleum pipeline, tells not only the story of Interprovincial Lakehead, which went on to become Interhome and now Enbridge, but also has my dad's story as he was part of it. In the foreword to the book by Bob Hewley, the chairman, he writes, "Ideas are often born of genius, others of intuition." The original idea for a corporate history of Interprovincial and Lakehead was born of reflection. I find it fascinating that Mr. Hewley is bringing together these two different worlds, the genius, if you will, the one who is phenomenally successful in the practical sense, and the one who has the intuition, who has the feeling, if you will, from the gut. That passion which drives a project. And so here we have the coming together of the inspirational and the practical. Whether it's named or not in the boardroom, in the mission statement of a corporation, truly, inspirational core values are at the heart of the success of every major project that has happened in the history of the world. My father, Gord Sheesby, who was General Counsel and Secretary of Interprovincial Pipeline Limited for many years, and later Vice President of Interhome Energy, in charge of the law department, writes in this corporate history, "The two toughest and most unique agreements I assisted in negotiating were the Norman Wells Agreement and the Montreal Deficiency Agreement. The main concern in structuring both agreements was to minimize financial risk to shareholders. We achieved that. What my father doesn't say here is how he achieved it. I know my father understood the bottom line of the company was to achieve success, maximize profits, minimize risk to shareholders. But he did it by building relationships with people, building trust, building respect. And how he did that was through inspirational core values. Now, I understand that there is a place for lawyers. My father was a lawyer. And I'm not suggesting that we diminish the importance of any of the key players that are involved in today's negotiations and decision making. We need the engineers. We need the politicians. We need the accountants. We need the environmentalists. But we also need a reflection upon inspirational core values. And if a person can bring attention to this, and indeed to bring some strengthening of relationships around core values, that goes so far in helping to move past impasses, to achieve higher levels of success in a shorter period of time. A few years ago, I had the honor of meeting with Dick Haskane and talking about my dad. And Dick, at that time, told me about his book, which he gave to me, called Northern Tigers, Building Ethical Canadian Corporate Champions, which he was kind enough to autograph for me, writing, "Dear Bruce, what a rewarding afternoon to talk about you and your father, who was one of my favorite executives. Hope you enjoy Northern Tigers." What I found fascinating in Dick's book is that he explains that the most important things he learned was through being the son of a butcher in Gleechan, Alberta. If you were to ask my dad the same question, he would tell you it was being the son of a bricklayer and eventually superintendent of the brick plant from Redcliffe, Alberta. Both men went back to their early roots and valued what they learned about simple things, which in turn could help them with bigger and bigger things. Mr. Haskane talks about the importance of ethics, doing the right thing. But he also talks about other values, about the importance, for instance, of stability. Stability for corporations to resist takeovers from multinationals. He talks about the importance of generosity, that is a key to true success, is giving back to the community. And so as I explored more and more of Mr. Haskane's book and heard his stories, I saw how indeed this weaved into my dad's stories and my own learnings from my experience around inspirational core values. Here's a picture of the senior management from the 1988 annual report of Interhome Energy. My dad, Mr. Hewley, Mr. Haskane, as I've referred to them, are part of that management team. The 18 inspirational core values that I've identified can be categorized according to 6 groups or 6 foundations: integrity, ethics, stability, balance, optimism, and success. The first foundation of inspirational core values is integrity. I recall once my dad telling me that years earlier he'd had sleepless nights as the company that he was working with was considering a merger. And as he explained to me, he went on to talk to several of his colleagues and said, we have to remember what it is we're doing. The business that we're in, the people who are depending upon us, the people who are loyal to the brand and the product that we are creating. And so part of integrity is being true to who you are and what you're about. Authenticity, purpose, and synergy are the three inspirational core values that go with integrity. Being authentic, having a clear sense of purpose, and understanding that your truth is synergistic with other people and other players. The second foundation of inspirational core values is ethics, doing the right thing. And this translates into the three core values of respect, helpfulness, and passion. Respect, basically treating others as you would have them treat you. Helpfulness, being willing to help someone else. That help between corporations, between competitors, can build incredible goodwill and trust, which can be an equity bank to be drawn upon later. And lastly, passion. Not enough just to have a code of ethics. People have to feel it. They've got to understand it. They've got to applaud it when others are following a code of ethics. It's got to be built into the fiber that people identify with. The third foundation for inspirational core values is what I call stability. Stability is connected to the values of tenacity, prosperity, and transformation. I found it interesting in Mr. Haskell's book, Northern Tigers, that he talks about the importance of stability to avoid hostile takeovers. That is, prosperity is good in that it helps to protect a company. It's not necessarily the sign of success in and of itself, but it is part of stability. The other part of stability, I think, that shouldn't be overlooked is tenacity, sticking at it. And my gosh, that was one thing that I learned from my dad. If there was ever someone who taught me to stick at it, whether I was out on the hockey rink and he was saying, "Sheesby, keep your hands on your stick. Sheesby, get up." It was part of my dad's mantra. Lastly, transformation should never be overlooked as part of stability. Stability gives you the opportunity and the ability to have breakthroughs. Breakthroughs are when you can take things to the next level. Consider, for instance, the 1972 Canada-Russia hockey series, if that wasn't a story of transformation. Or the First World War victory of Vimy Ridge. You need stability in order to have transformation. The fourth foundation of inspirational core values, which maybe is a little more subtle and sometimes not fully recognized, is balance. The importance of putting things in perspective is part of balance. And the core values connected to it are wellness, meaning, and bridge building. Wellness is something that has to be felt at all different levels. Personnel level, of course, but in terms of the economics, the value to our customer, all the variables need to be taken into consideration. Meaning is connected to purpose, but it's going where we necessarily don't want to go and discovering great strength and achievement in that process. Consider going on a journey from point A to point B. The shortest distance is not going to be a straight line if there's a black hole in the middle. When we find ourselves going on detours to avoid a troubling circumstance or something that's outside of our control, We can discover something and achieve something that makes us stronger through that detour that we otherwise wouldn't have. That's what I mean by meaning. And lastly, bridge building. Bridge building is about finding a way to connect two places which apparently have no common ground. Engineers do an excellent job of it. So do core values. When people are locked in positions and cannot see any possibility of having an agreement, I believe that if you move up to talking about core values and build a relationship around those core values, it will have tremendous impact when you go back and reconsider the positions that you're in. The fifth foundation of inspirational core values is optimism. You will never be successful without optimism. Where does it come from? Well, there needs to be vision. And that vision has to be connected to the past. Unless you know where you're coming from, you're not going to move forward. You know, there's a saying that the farther you pull back the bow, the farther ahead you can shoot the arrow. The second part of optimism comes from what I call enlightenment. Enlightenment is not about changing the circumstances. It's about seeing the circumstances in a different way. All of a sudden, the light bulb goes on. All of a sudden, you see something that's always been there, it's been right in front of you, but you see it in a different light, and that can change everything. The third part of optimism is growth. It's organic. Very simply, you've got to plant, then you've got to water if you're going to reap some benefit. And sometimes we need to see the development of ideas in a more organic way, that things need time. The sixth pillar of inspirational core values, for many it's called the bottom line, is success. But again, the interesting thing is that I've placed prosperity under stability. Prosperity is already a given. It alone does not bring success. So what is success? Well, it's the fundamental art of creation. To create something to make our world better than what it was otherwise. You know, I find it very interesting, for instance, in many of the debates that go on between, say, industrialists and environmentalists, that there is a core value in common. Both have a deep respect for creation. The second core value connected to success is adventure. Having fun, if you will. Moving past the fears. Moving past seeing the glass as half empty and seeing it as half full. Looking at the uncertainties and the challenges with excitement. If you can do that, and if you can build that into your culture, you're going to be successful. And lastly, a key to success, as I've looked at and studied organizations, corporations, individuals, is generosity. Giving back, sharing what you have. Not only as individual philanthropers, but also as corporations, being a good citizen. It's a way to express the values. And these expressions of values builds equity within the community, amongst potential partners, even competitors. My goal through inspirational core values is to bring an added value to the real world, to corporations, to projects like building pipelines, increasing the bottom line, motivating staff to do better at whatever we're producing, to bridge gaps between differences amongst political parties, to have concrete, real, practical outcomes that are motivated from core values.